But what exactly would happen if we open our African borders to brother nations? What is the impact of this on our economy, on different aspects of our economy when we make or create a borderless Africa? So I was actually thinking about how to start this episode, and an analogy came to mind. You know when parents give birth to children, and maybe for due to one reason or another, maybe the death of one of them or the both of them even, or just something tragic happens, and then the children have to live with relatives, different relatives. Let's say that there are about five, four, three children, but then they have to live and grow up with different people. They understand that this person is their sibling, but due to that singular fact, due to distance, due to growing up with different people, they, I mean, you wouldn't really say that they have a relationship, even though they understand that, oh, you're my sibling, but they do not have a relationship. And then maybe after they're grown, it now takes them intentionally working on their relationship to have a good relationship. And I just had that analogy when I was thinking about Africa. As a continent, it feels like we're siblings, but then we grew up with different people, children of the same parents, growing up with different people. And so we don't really know each other. We wouldn't really say we like each other even, but now we're grown and we have to learn to have a relationship with one another. And it just makes total sense. If you've been following the news lately, you would realize that African countries are now opening their borders to one another. The likes of Ghana, Benin Republic, Seychelles, Togo, Rwanda, and a couple of others. It's like we're now getting to that point where we want to intentionally groom our relationship with one another as children of the same parents. But what exactly would happen if we open our African borders to brother nations? What will happen? What is the impact of this on our economy, on different aspects of our economy when we make or create a borderless Africa? In the second video that I posted on this channel, I spoke about how countries in Europe just find it easy to relate with one another. You travel, it's easier to travel within Europe than it is within Africa. Whereas on the flip side, on the African continent, it's usually difficult. It's as crazy as wanting to go from one country to the other, and then there's no direct flight to that African country, and then you have to go through another route. Just a lot is happening. Just like the analogy of children who were raised by different people. I think we even have more relationship with countries in Europe, in Asia and America than we do with one another. And I think we have now gotten to that point where we want to make efforts to do better with one another as African countries. So you see this move towards a visa-free Africa. It is going to mean a lot for trade, for business, for innovations, and the future of Africa. So it's not just the movement of people. It's like we're opening up the doors of our homes to people. So it's like we're trusting them to come into our home. And I think it's a first step to many, many, many great things. It starts with traveling, but this is not just a travel story. It is an economic story because movement affects everything. It affects trade, it affects investment, tourism, partnerships, collaborations, innovations, literally everything. And according to Africa Visa Openness Index, it says visa openness is directly connected to regional integration and economic cooperation across the continent. And the easier it is for Africans to move, the easier it is to build relationships and economic activity across our borders. Africa is one of the least connected regions to itself. It's like we're actually even closer to Europe and Asia than we are to African countries. And it's been like this for many decades, whereby African nations export raw materials to other countries and then we import them here as finished products. So we export them there to be refined and then we import them back into our countries. We don't rely on one another. We go straight to Europe, straight to America, straight to Asia, rather than trading extensively with neighboring countries. And so for a long time, it was actually even very difficult for goods to move across Africa. A country exports cocoa, another exports oil, and another minerals, and then we import all of these back as finished products into our continent or into our different countries. And I think it's strange. It's literally like living in a house with someone and then keeping malice with them, not talking to them. Pretty ridiculous if you think about it in that context. Because why am I going outside to look for help when I have someone that I'm living with in the house that I cannot even ask? That's how bad it was. And so I think this is an important development whereby our countries are now open to one another, where we can import and export and just freely move, basically. And the first thing that becomes easier when movement becomes easier is business. It will reflect in our businesses, in our economies, when we can freely move across countries on the continent. Imagine a manufacturer in Nigeria traveling to an African country easily, going to Kenya easily. This is actually very important, because imagine the issue of the Middle East and the Strait of Hormuz that was closed for a period of time. And now it is affecting us regardless of the distance. We're still affected because, of course, we rely on this part of the world for certain things, right? And that's one of the cons of globalization. Globalization is of great benefit. Let's not even dispute that, right? You get more options because you have, like, now there's a wider net. It's like you have a wider pool, a wider sea that you can shop from. So there are more options. But what we also need to understand, that we now become prone to the fragilities of these countries, of this continent, of this part of the world. Like I said, the Strait of Hormuz. So because we, one way or another, relied on things that move past that part of the world, we now become prone to whatever fragility that is obtainable. And so because of the close of the Strait of Hormuz, it affected so many things. Oil, for example. I mean, there are other aspects, but that's just an example. And so I'm of the opinion that to make things easier for ourselves, while still understanding that globalization is important, I think we also need to narrow down on nearshoring. That's the supply chain concept. And nearshoring is when businesses move manufacturing production to their primary market instead of relying on global suppliers. Like I said, when in the case of global suppliers, it's a bigger pool, so we have more options, but we cannot rely only on globalization. So nearshoring becomes an advantage for us when we now utilize the suppliers that are within our primary reach. And like the purpose of this channel is, we cannot continue to be mere consumers of the global economy. It gets to a point where we actually now have to look within ourselves. And so as beautiful as globalization is, nearshoring is something that we have to focus on. And this barrier within our borders that has been reduced is going to make nearshoring even better. So in fact, business on the continent in a measure that we have not even been able to fathom. Another aspect that would actually increase exponentially is tourism. And instead of Africans to continue to spend tourist money on other continents, other countries in the world, more people will begin to explore African destinations. So our local economies will grow, hotels will grow, airlines will grow. And then on the third part, knowledge would spread faster. Because when people are moving, ideas would also move with them. And when people meet, innovations would actually spread as well. So ideas will move across the continent. Our technology ecosystems will become stronger when founders, researchers interact more frequently. We cannot continue to operate a fragmented society. Collaboration is something that we have to utilize. We have to squeeze the juice out of it. And honestly, to be very frank, according to history, some of the most powerful economic regions in the world developed because ideas moved efficiently across borders. And so we cannot effectively maximize our potential if movement is restricted on the continent. So just imagine how things would rapidly change with this ease of border protocols across African countries. Let's talk about AfCFTA, for example. African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. So let me tell you what AfCFTA is. It is a massive continent-wide free trade agreement established by the African Union, and the goal is to create a single unified market for goods and services to move across the African continent. And AfCFTA actually represents the largest free trade area in the world. And this is determined by the number of participating countries, connecting a market of over 1.3 billion people. The benefits and the goal of AfCFTA is basically to boost intra-African trades, eliminate tariffs, and also for economic transformation. So now imagine that organization now having free movement across the continent. I think it's going to revolutionize things, businesses, tourism, and the African economy at large. So instead of exporting raw materials to different parts of the world outside the continent, now importing finished goods. It means that we as Africans could manufacture more, could process more, and also add value locally. By doing that, we build stronger industries, create more jobs, develop the regional supply chains. That's exactly where logistics becomes important. Because no continent becomes an industrial powerhouse without the efficient movement of goods. But then now let's be realistic. Opening the borders alone will not transform Africa. I mean, it's a great start, but that alone is not what is needed, what is required to transform the African continent. There are still several challenges on the table. The issue of infrastructure, expensive flights, weak rail networks, customs delay, security concerns, regulatory inefficiencies, and also the challenge of implementation. Even the supporters of AfCFTA, they acknowledge that these things are easier to sign than to implement. Signing is just the smallest part of the job, but implementation is a major part. And so even though the policies are changing, the challenges alone are not just policy. The challenges are also implementation. African airlines we cannot continue to remain fragmented. If we're opening the doors of our nations to one another, we also have to trust that whatever we're bringing in is for mutual benefit. And so I'm just forced to ask this question. Can Africa build the systems needed to support integration? I also believe that one of the biggest questions we need to ask ourselves in the next few decades or just in the days ahead is, do we really want to build together? If we are now coming to the point where we want to learn to know more about one another, is this something of mutual interest? Are we both interested in this? Do we really want to build together? Because free movement is not just about traveling, it's about trust, it's about cooperation, it's about economic integration, and it's about creating an Africa where opportunities are not limited by colonial era borders. History has already shown us what happens when African countries operate in isolation. And the future may reveal what is possible when African nations produce together, trade together, innovate together, and build together. And the future of Africa may not depend on how we are connected to the other parts of the world, but how we are connected to ourselves. Do you think this is something that we can pull off? I really hope this is not just something that we would forget 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Like I said, the policy part is the easiest. How about the implementation, the execution? That's exactly where the real work is. Do you think Africans can pull this off? I'd really love to read your thoughts. So make sure you put a comment in the comment section, share this video with someone. And I really hope that these conversations are just stirring up something. They're helping you or making you see things differently or approach things in a different way. Or even if it is just the sheer interest in listening to the news, in reading on the history of Africa, in reading on why certain things are done certain way. If that's all it's doing for you, trust me, I think it's working. I'm interested to see how far we get with these things that are happening on the face of the continent. And I also want to believe that I'm committed to seeing things through. I hope you are as well. I'll see you in my next video. Until then, please don't forget to share this with someone. Bye.